Cool, guys. Sorry, it's all a little bit ad lib here at the Bodhrán Buzz. I'm going to get better at this as we go. It just takes a little while for me to get on and learn about all this techie stuff. I'm still trying to get my head around it. So I hope you're all enjoying the podcast. I was going to play a few tunes for you myself, but my levels are all a bit mad here at the moment, so I might just leave that for now and just jump straight into our second guest. So our second guest is the belled Mossie Griffin. So absolutely delighted to have Mossie, and most people would, well, a lot of people would know Mossie from his playing over the years, over the years with all the various different people he's played with. He's going to tell us all about that now. But Mossie is also the moderator and I suppose owner of the biggest Bodhrán forum that we have online, I suppose, really, and called the Irish Bodhrán. So Mossie's the one that keeps us all in tow and looks after us. So without further ado, I'm going to move into Mossie here. Here we go. Alright, Moss.
Greetings.
How are you doing,
How are we
man?
doing? Are we hearing each other okay this time?
I'm pretty sure we can all hear each other. You can hear me, yeah?
Yep, perfectly.
Good. How's life with you?
Not bad. May I just say first of all that was, I suppose, 50 minutes of absolute delightful chat and music from Anna.
Yeah, she's
For
amazing.
somebody who I'd never talked to before today, she's made one hell of an influence.
Good. Yeah, and she's a fantastic
Really-
player and just a lovely
Really
person.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. I think everybody else in the comments is saying the same thing, so everybody's delighted. So, happy days. So, Moss, will you do me a favour and tell me a little bit about your own style and how you got into playing? Actually, that would be really nice.
Okay. You have no idea how many times I've ran this through my head in the last week or so, trying to figure out how I was going to say this. First of all, apologies to everybody. No teeth. Diabetes for you. Okay, so I was born in London. To be precise, just Kingsbury, which ironically now is an old people's home, so I can end up going back there eventually.
Ah, yeah, you have a lot more in the tank than that now, Moss.
Hopefully. So, we moved to South Kerry, to Waterville, the parish of Drummond, in 77. And I'd kind of like made little inways towards a bit of dancing or maybe a bit of piano accordion. I kind of settled on the button accordion. All right. Polkas, slides, the usual routine for South Kerry. Ironically, I can't play a polka on a bar arm to save my freaking life.
Right.
It's just, no, me, polkas, go away, like spoon players, leave me.
And I would say
Okay, so,
a lot of people are like
yeah.
that with polkas as well. So yeah.
Yeah, seems that way. So ironically, I moved to Clare where they take your polkas off you as you cross the border. God, I love living in that county. So I started playing the accordion for sets, and particularly then there was a local band, a country western band, called Paddy and Rose, the Wildwood Sound, and Paddy was the drummer and accordion player in that group. Paddy was the first person I ever saw play with the straight wrist on the hi-hat of the drums, on the kit drums.
Okay.
Okay? While I was learning to play drums myself, I had the bad habit of doing this all the time. I'm back in camera.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Putting the pressure on the wrist and the upper forearm. So when it came time to I started Bodhrán on the cover of my accordion case. That was my first Bodhrán.
Back in the pizza box,
Right. Used to drive my parents absolutely mental. And my sister, God rest her. But she can't really talk 'cause she was dancing in the bloody bathroom all the time.
She was really coming out of the kitchen.
Listen, our house could be a maelstrom. You could have my mum playing whistle box at one end of the house, me at the other end playing drums or playing accordion, and my sister dancing in the middle on the hardest floor possible. So, yeah, dancing, big part of my life when I was growing up. As I got a little bit better at hammering out a rhythm on my accordion case. I finished school and I started an apprenticeship, and my apprenticeship took me to Listowel. And I'd made my mind up that I wanted to play Bodhrán. I didn't have a Bodhrán yet. I'd had the loan of one. I had the loan of a very old Charlie Byrne Bodhrán to begin with, which wasn't a bad place to start off.
Yeah.
Then one night during the Listowel races, it was a wet, stormy night. I mean, it was nobody goes out in that kind of weather, except Stockton's Wing, who were playing right outside my bedroom window in Listowel. And that was my first time seeing Tommy Hayes.
Fantastic.
Blew my tiny little mind. Next morning, I went. There was a store right downstairs that had a Bodhrán for sale. I bought the Bodhrán right there and then. And then never put it down for the rest of my life.
Never look back. Yeah.
Never go back.
But to start on Charlie, you know, is a great way to start. You know, they're just such an iconic sound, really, don't they? You know, I only got
It was the style before that, the one that had the really narrow kind of like sieve type shape to it, with the wires and the Cascamite ball in the middle to hold the wires together.
Right.
It was a really old one, I think Charlie told me it was a very early 1970s.
Do you still have it?
No, that was only on loan. I assume the person who lent it to me still has it.
Okay.
But I haven't been down home in years to try and check it out or track it down, because if I can, I'm having that
I
thing.
was just going to say, you should definitely try source that, like, be a nice piece of history
God,
to be able
yeah.
to see to show everybody on form and that, you know.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And
So from carry on. I'll ask another question.
yeah, I was just going to ask you, so did you start off playing Bodhrán in London?
No, I was 11 when I moved to Ireland,
Yeah.
and I started learning Bodhrán when I was probably about 16.
Yeah.
It was late enough, really.
Okay, yeah, I was a teenager, early teen. I was about 12, 13 when I started off myself, but that's interesting, yeah. And what was it, like, in terms of styles and sticking styles and all that stuff, I'm always interested to ask people that would start off a good long while ago before me, what did that look like at that stage, and what was the sound like?
To begin with, because it was the stick that came with the Bodhrán, it was a small little barbell. I've seen people doing reps with smaller sticks. It was huge. Almost straight away, because I was in my apprenticeship as a carpenter, I carved myself my first softwood stick, and then went on to make one from, I think it was from teak, which was my driver for the next 4 or 5 years. I then ran into a pipe maker from England. I, for the life of me, to this day, can't remember his name. Maybe Stephen Hannigan might remember him, because I think I met the two of them around the same day. And your man offered to make me my first custom tippers.
Right.
Okay, so if you've ever seen my original tipper that Gordon makes,
Yeah.
that's an exact copy of the one I originally carved by hand.
Right.
Your man took the calipers, took all the different measurements, and sent it off to me a couple of weeks later. And that's been my go-to solid tipper ever since then.
And is there much weight in that?
African blackwood, so a good density rather than weight. I'm a big believer that a tipper doesn't have to be heavy; it has to be balanced. If it's balanced, the power you produce in your wrist and forearm transmits to a good, clean contact from the tip of the tipper as it hits the skin. Okay, so you don't need to have weight behind it. You just need to have quality of contact as you strike.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And then just confidence as well, and making sure that you completely follow through on every hit that you do.
That's it. Don't let the tipper head scrape across the drum as you strike. Make it a clean strike, and you've got half the battle done there.
Yeah, good stuff. I had a bit of an echo there, guys. Sorry, that was just again another setting on my OBS here. my apologies. It's sorted there now. So, that's really great, Moss. And then in terms of tone, like who would you take an influence on for the way you play tone and how you shape the tone and how you shape a tune?
Okay. something most people have noticed about my playing is that I don't have a recognized motor rhythm. I don't have that rhythm that we drop back to when we're not quite sure what's going to happen next and plow ahead into the next one. I'm making my shot selection in real time as we play. I'm sure you, given the amount of time you've been playing now, I'm sure you do it yourself too. All right, motor rhythms, they're okay. I mean, the likes of Johnny now uses a fantastic. I mean, the most iconic motor rhythm out there is played by Johnny Ringo.
Yeah.
All right, but then there are variations of it. So like you got this like boom checka boom checka boom checka boom checka kind of effort going on with Johnny started playing, whereas a little album that Tommy Hayes played on with Alistair Fraser called The Road North had a track in it called Tommy's Two Backers, where he's playing this little clay pot, boom, buck, 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 kind of thing. All right? And I'll never forget that the start of it goes exactly like this. It goes, boom, checka, boom, checka, boom, checka, boom, checka, boom, checka, boom, checka. It's very similar to Johnny Ringo's version of it. Okay, but it's very high-pitched. So I started going because you were after picking up a 22 inches.
Yeah, brilliant drum by Rob Ford.
Okay, I wasn't far off it. My old Charlie Byrne was a 20 inch.
Big drum.
Most of them in those days would have been like 18 and 19 inch by him. Obviously, I had to go bigger, and I was fascinated by this higher pitched sound. All right, and the thing is, no YouTube, not a lot of albums with Bodhráns on them. Where I was living in South Kerry was nearly an hour and a half to the nearest session alone. Everything I learnt came from other influences of music, but I brought them into the body of Irish music. So while Kevin Kneff, Johnny McDonough, Tommy Hayes would have been primary sources to what a Bodhrán sounds like, I was a bit more interested in what a Bodhrán could sound like.
Very good. It's just about pushing it on, and you wanted to see where it could go.
I never really, like, it wasn't like that was my plan to go forward. It's just that when I heard Irish music, the sound I heard in my head with Bodhrán wasn't being played somewhere else at the time. All right, so I used to try and sculpt what I was doing over time to fit what was going on upstairs in the Grey Dog, and then here in the heart.
Trying to marry the two then.
All right.
That was the hardest part, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then
that was the hardest
fight
part
between them. Trying to quell that as well.
And anybody who thinks that you'll get to a point where you go, oh yeah, I've made it, I'm good, never happened.
Yeah.
Remember the Dunning-Kruger curve, where everybody goes, oh, that Bodhrán looks very easy. You know, it gets a little bit higher on the curve. Oh, this is no problem at all. A little bit further down the curve. Why is that fella giving me dirty looks? All the way down to the bottom. Back up the curve, about halfway up the next curve is where I'm sitting at the moment going, yeah, I almost got the hang of it. We're getting there.
I always said to myself over the years that if you ever felt or were ever telling yourself, oh, I'm definitely there where I want to be now, I always said to myself, that's the danger zone, because you kind of get a bit of a notion about yourself, and you got to be very careful of notions.
Now I'm seeing comments in the chat. Would it help if I turn myself down a little bit and you turn yourself up?
Yeah, we could try it. I'm pretty loud on my side, so it must be something with the software that I'm just definitely missing. But anyway, I'll go a little bit closer to the mic, and hopefully that'll be a bit better.
Right, I'm down a bit and a bit closer.
Cool. How's that, guys? You can let us know in the comments there if you wouldn't mind. Just make sure you can hear us all. I'm talking a little bit kind of quiet as well because I'm quite loud, just in my ears, and I don't have time to go figure out on OBS how to turn that off.
Well, of course, you're stuck on monitoring.
Exactly.
Hence the, like yourself, the phones behind the ears.
Yeah. So
more questions.
Brian,
see replay.
Yeah, you can see Brian Morris's question or comment here. Mossie's approach to high-end tones in particular was a big influence on myself and loads of Bodhrán players in my generation. I remember listening intently to his playing on Gary Shannon's Lose the Head album.
Yes, that high-end tone. You see, this is Okay, I'm not actually sure how to go about this one. As most people know at this stage, I had to drop out of music for a couple of years for ill health. Okay? So when I came back to music, I kind of took a look at some of the stuff that has been said about Bodhrán in music, and I thought to myself, well, that's going to have to go. No, not having that. So that's why I started getting involved in forums.
Yeah.
But mostly because people had this preconception of top end and bottom end, or top end and Kerry style. A, if there was a Kerry style, I'd freaking be it. Mm-hmm. All right? B, that top end came from my bloody Kerry style.
Right. Interesting.
Or at least the part of it, particularly in Munster, that propagated a little bit, say, towards Dublin. I think that top end style was already starting to develop in the north anyway. All right? But definitely down our neck of the woods, nobody was playing that toppy sound. But because of no YouTube, you weren't seeing what's being done.
Absolutely. Different story altogether.
Okay? Ask Junior Davey how he ended up with the style he has.
I'd love to know. Junior, I think, is watching. Junior, you might make a little comment on that. How you ended up with the style that you play now.
If he wasn't blowing smoke up our butts for Skin and Bone, he said he I don't know, had he just won a provincial flower or a county flower or something, and he thought, right, that's it, I've made it. And he comes home and he goes, he put on the radio and then Lose the Head was playing. And he just goes, for God's sake. And had to start again.
And go again from time.
But he would only have heard my playing. He wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have known that what I was doing was a result of double end playing with both ends of the tipper, not predominantly the single end. Okay, so that's why I have a problem when people try and put titles to styles of play, because the moment you focus on one, it disintegrates.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. It's interesting way to think about it. I think most people probably, I'd say single-ended probably came out of listening to players and then trying to replicate what they were doing without being able to see them, and then...
There was a transition where double end became kind of like top end and top end became single end.
Mm-hmm. In what way? Tonal?
Tonal and technique as well, because players like Junior, like John Joe, Ronan Maloney, they were predominantly single-end style players. Now, the difference there being that John Joe and Ronan would have been familiar enough with actually seeing me play. Junior, however, had never seen me play.
Was just listening, yeah.
All right, so he wasn't copying the tones; he was emulating the tones. And then developing his own style off of that then afterwards, the same way I would have, say, my biggest earlier influences would have been Mick Lawler, a piper from Wexford who won nearly as many All-Irelands as Junior has in his day. All right, and Big Jim Sutherland from Scotland.
I'm hearing an awful lot about Jim Sunderland, is that what you said?
Jim Sutherland.
He's supposed to be brilliant. I don't know much about his style at all. I must delve in.
Look up a band called Easy Club.
I'm gonna write that down. Yeah.
All right. And for me, there's one predominant part of my style. It's a single backbeat. All right. So I'll be playing boom chicka boom chicka boom 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 chicka boom chicka boom boom.
Yeah.
Up and in beat. On the drum.
Okay, so it's like a drop beat, kind of I would call it a drop beat.
Yes. I suck at technical terms.
Everybody has different names. This is just the name I picked that up off John Joe. Like that.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah, and I would use a lot of them myself actually in my own playing too. And usually if I'm gonna do beats like that, and I want to, usually it depends on what I'm playing. If I'm playing with trad stuff and there's kind of a very, very particular part of the tune where there is an upbeat, suits it, I'll tend to change the voicing to make it stand out a little bit more as well, instead of just hitting on, if I'm playing all bass, instead of just hitting on bass. let it ring in with a higher tone and back off again. Not to do too much of it. That's really interesting, Moss. What's your take on, I suppose, the single-ended styles, we'll say, that's happening these days versus like some of the older styles, like double-ended styles, like what Ringo would have played before. What do you think? Which sound would you prefer, really, or would it be a mix of both?
Given my own style, I'd have to go with the more modern approach to playing. But having said that, when I see players like yourself, I mean, I still consider likes of yourself and Colin to be, young Scots.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. But then move the microscope further on down into the puddle, and you find the Matthew Hurrells.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. I like lift up off my seat when I hear these lads playing.
Absolutely.
With it's not exactly pride, but it's nice to know that there's probably a part of my DNA in there somewhere.
Yeah, you think it just goes down the lines. That's interesting now.
All right. Matthew actually has I think he has a smoother double-ended roll than a lot of single-ended players for some reason. I remember the last time I came to the Bullabuzz, I sat in on one in Cullum's classes, and he asked the class why or when or why do we do double rolls, and it's because it gives a smoother, actually more controllable roll in some ways.
Yeah, it's definitely harder to control a single-ended roll versus a double-ended roll, that's for certain. Yeah.
Yeah. But the one thing I like about the single-ended roll, and I've never really been able to master it myself, even though I do have a bouncing version of it, is I like the precision of it. I like, so you can almost imagine it being played on a set of pipes.
Yeah. Okay.
That sharp.
And I suppose there's a reason for that as well, just from someone that's playing both of those styles and in many different ways, especially with the single end stuff. And the reason being is just when you're doing a triplet or an ornament with one side of the stick, it's all completely even across. Whereas if I grab a stick, whereas if you're doing a double-ended roll, depending on where you're holding the stick, this is a bad example now because it's two different sides, but anyway, depending on where you're holding the stick, you're going to get a cleaner roll or not such a clean roll. Usually, now not everybody's like this, but usually if you're holding the stick a little bit too high, you don't have very much on the top. This is just for anybody else that's...
Exactly, yeah.
So you don't have too much power, or it's just harder to get the power there. So anybody that does play like that, and I know a good few people who do, and can still get power and make a roll sound good, it's really, really great. It's a credit to them, and it shows you how good they actually are. But by holding the stick down a little bit lower, especially for anybody that's starting, that might be watching the podcast, is just in it for a year or two, holding the stick down a little bit lower and having more meat on the top of the stick here will give you a bit more weight.
The shape of the head of your tipper would be a compound tipper like this, or a solid tipper. To me, anyway, this has a fairly flattened edge to it, which gives you good attack on the edge as you strike the skin. Whereas I have other ones from Gordon as well that are more sloped back, and I can hear a much smoother effect of it
like that, yeah.
as I'm playing. Yeah, a bit like that. All right, and I've designed single end tippers where I've actually created flat mushroom heads on them, so that when you're playing a single beat, the edge of the mushroom is catching the skin, giving you plenty of attack.
When you say mushroom,
but when
what do you mean by it? Just the shape, the kind of round shape?
No, but flattened, so it actually looks like a mushroom on the end of the stick.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right, but it's got a harder edge around it and a softer dome going around it. So when I go for a roll, because of the way I do a double in roll, I pull the hand away from the skin a small bit. So if I'm playing normally and I'm playing parallel near enough to my drum, when I'm playing single end, when I want to do a double end roll, or particularly I want to get a very sharp one, I bring the hand out a small bit, and increase the angle of the rotation.
Yeah, you've more momentum hitting the stick then, or more momentum of the stick hitting the drum. Is that what you mean?
Exactly, yeah. So I can keep the roll parallel if only a nice smooth one. But if I want to roll more attack, I just bring it out a small bit and increase the angle of the swing.
Interesting. When you do a single-ended roll, Mossie, are you doing a down, down, up? Is it a bounce?
No, I'm bouncing the tipper across the skin.
And so are you sure? Do you know what exactly is happening? As in, is it? I'm just trying to think. Is you doing it from the up or from the down? You starting off
for the down.
Yeah. So
it keep, and what's more, it keeps, because of the way I do it. I can't really do it against my hand, but can you hear that? Okay, so that's basically my roll, single end on the drum, and I quite literally started doing this.
Trying to figure out how that bounce and control the bounce. Okay.
Control the bounce and time the bounce.
That's interesting. Yeah. Cool.
And it stays within the up and down structure of my style of playing. Whereas if I'd learnt the other way of doing it that a lot of you lads are teaching, it's a bit like a step dancer. You end up on a left and right leg situation, and you have to at some point do a double down to get back into the
swing of it, into the proper. Yeah, I have you. Yeah.
Into your first up, down and up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, Ray, have a look at some of the comments here, Moss. You have them there in front of you as well. Junior says, I was asking Junior just a comment earlier. You got it, Mossy. He says, seeing you in 1990 at the All Ireland, my style is influenced by a mix of Mossy, Seamus, and John Joe. Track 6 on Lose the Head is the best example of flute Bodhrán I have ever heard. Mossie was ahead of the game back then and has sorry if I can open this, and has fantastic musicality in his playing. That's lovely comments from Junior.
Thank you very much.
Really, really nice. So Davog says, same here, Junior. End of the 80s, Mossie and Quinner, Damien Quinn I think he means, were the young scuts of the day. Blew my mind and motivated me more, and Tommy and Christy, big influences and great players of our youth. Yeah, and Davog made a comment earlier about, himself and a few of you guys had developed your own styles as well, it's just really
Quinn, John Joe, Ronan, they're all around. I'd consider those like the next bracket, the next generation that was following on from our generation.
Yeah,
I was kind of the tail end of the Tommy and Johnny Ringo generation. All right, those are the little buggers that came afterwards and scared the living daylights out of us.
I can imagine. Yeah, and it's like that now. I mean, this is literally like a conveyor belt. I think I'm going to have to jump in there a bit today. It's literally like a conveyor belt, the way, the different styles move around. Oh, sorry, I have you in front, that's what it is. I'm just going to move you this way. There we go. The way the different players and styles move on, and how younger players then, take on, they soak everything in, and then decide what they want to do themselves, and then it's just you see the energy coming in, and just the energy and working on so much technique. It's with my own students, I'm all about just working on the technique at the start and just getting that right. So I think it's the way it should be, because I actually learned the opposite way around. So for me, I was learning a little bit in my class just about technique and all that kind of crack, just a small bit about traditional technique and that, so and then I was going home and listening to albums that were just the likes of, I keep going back to Tommy Hayes' Room in the North. It's a brilliant album, some gorgeous stuff on it. So where was I going? Another player that I was talking to Colin about there recently is a guy called Hoppy Hopkins. You know much about Hoppy?
No, nothing at all.
Hopkins. If anybody doesn't know anything about Hoppy Hopkins or isn't sure, I'm sure there's someone here in the comments knows who Hoppy is. Hoppy is a deadly Bodhrán player. Really, really great Bodhrán player. Living in France for many years now. Davog, you might have come across Hoppy at some festivals and stuff. He's a percussionist, kind of, would say, by trade mostly, but a fantastic Bodhrán player as well. And probably moved out of Ireland, a good bit back, so that's probably why you missed him, but he's a fantastic player. But yeah, it's interesting to see how the styles just move on like that. Just on that note, Mossie, would it be okay if we play this piece of music?
Yes. Now, I was originally trying to organise a different piece of music with my good mate Marcus Maloney on banjo and bouzouki. But the video kicked my butt quite royally several times today. So we gave up, and I went back to an older video that redid the Bodhrán for it.
Great. So anyway, we're gonna move on to that. I have that little video lined up here. Hopefully it works. And yeah, here we go. absolutely deadly. Really, really great. Can you hear me there, Mossie? 222, Mossie.
Sorry, I was just muting
Yeah,
myself.
all good. That was absolutely gorgeous. Really, really, really,
Thank
really
you.
nice playing, and you know, a lot of would we say empathy for the tune?
Well, you got to remember, we're playing together the better part of 30 years now at this stage.
And Marcus is amazing. Oh man.
And when that's the other half of the music you get to play, and I mean the rest of them too, we played it regularly with Anne-Marie McCormick, with Kieran Kassan, Sean Ernest, Martin Dermody, like yikes.
Amazing stuff.
I remember my sister Kate, who's actually, her dancing style is nearly more of an influence to me than any Bodhrán player was. Okay, but so yeah, Kate, when Kate was living in America, I used to send her every album I got my hands on. I'd burn it, fire it out to her. All right, so her daughter grew up listening to exactly the same music I did, Renaud, and Renaud went on to win an All-Ireland in Chanel's Dancing.
Right.
With a scarily similar rhythm. Even though she hadn't heard me play much, she'd heard a lot of the music I played or listened to.
And picked it
a
up.
lot
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah.
And that the music that I was listening to influenced me, influenced her, and the end result was a very similar style of phrasing in our timing for ornamentation.
And it's interesting to think how far that would go as you go down the lines, as you go down the generational lines.
Yeah.
And it's like, kind of like Chinese whispers and what way it'll end up, you know, in 5 generations time. You know, it's just, you just never know what way it's going to go. So it's really interesting. And then just the way you did your tones as well, you know, when it changes tune, just dropping down, and something I would do an awful lot as well is just peel back the dynamic and just drop it right down and use lower tones on the change. That's a big part of my own thing that I like to do, you know. Unless I'm
Yeah,
playing a
pop.
beat that's just driving it on and going mad, it's different. But if I'm just going to play trad the way I
Exactly, yeah.
that'd be my...
But actually, a lot of that would be my guitar and bouzouki playing.
Yes, I suppose that would make sense. Yeah.
I tend to think of tone changes as chord changes.
Yeah. I'd be the very same.
And then
chordal progression.
and then harmonies of what I would have done before. So, for instance, if I just taken a simple motor rhythm in the first half, I could do the same motor rhythm, but bring it up 2 or 3 tones up to the top of the drum in the second half of the tune. So that you're getting a dynamic shift, but keeping the same rhythm.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? Daryl McDicken is saying here, great stuff, Mossie. In a lot of recordings I listen to, I wish the Bodhrán was up more in the mix. I'll agree with you there, Daryl. I understand it is an accompanying instrument nonetheless. I often wish it was more present. Do you have any thoughts on that yourself?
I'm Mossie Griffin. I have thoughts on everything. Come on, somebody out there is thinking it. No, okay, right. So, so yes, I do have a thought on it. I tend to think of music in general as a pyramid, or we'll say a pyramid of orbs. It's like cue balls. Okay, 3-dimensional pyramid. And some instruments are on the first layer, some instruments are on the second layer. Other the higher up you go, you're kind of like hitting tin whistle and high-pitched fiddle territory by the time you get to the peak. But Bodhrán exists in the gaps between these. So when you're playing, you're striving to be heard, yes, but also not to dominate.
Definitely.
All right, so you slip into the gaps. You want to be heard? If there's a beat here, you slip into the beat just before it. If there's a beat over here, slip in after it. Create a syncopation with what the rhythm is going on. You said something very earlier on that I found quite interesting about finding yourself playing something that you weren't prepared to be playing in the session. and that it wasn't suiting what was going on. I'd make the argument that what you're actually doing is you're occupying those free spaces and filling the pieces where their phrasing and their rhythm isn't taking them. It builds a lovely scaffold up underneath the music, but if it gets above the music, it'll swamp it out.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah. Just having a nice base layer is what I'm all about, really, when I'm playing my own thing. It just generally we'll say 85% of my playing will be just having a nice base layer underneath it. If there's something that's really nice in the tune, I want to make it stand out, and if it it already stands out already, but just if I want to make it stand out more, I'll replicate it on the drum and then sit back again. But where some people can fall down is just doing it too much, and then they stand out too much, and then it just gets a bit too mad. And yeah, so I think that's something that you can develop with musical maturity. Musical age. You could be any age and still play like a teenager in a way, but probably not as energetic and as all that stuff, physically, but you could still have that kind of, so it doesn't matter. I don't think it means, it matters what age you start at. You can, you need to have your years, you need to do your hours, to really, really understand dynamics and how to have empathy, especially if you don't have a teacher. That's really difficult.
Yeah, it's well, again, I had no teacher for anything I ever played. No teacher for box, bodhrán, drums, guitar, bouzouki. I did quite literally, in fact, bouzouki. I was in Gary, Magella, Sharon, and Mary Shannon's house. I can't really say one because the obvious one would be say, well, I was in Sharon's house. You know what people are like when they start talking. However, Mary was heading off. This is the youngest, the banjo player. Mary was heading off, I think it's to Australia for a year or two. And I was sitting in the back room listening to a bit of music. Mary arrives in with her mandola, a guitar-sized bouzouki, drops it in my lap, and I mean from a height. Could have been like nasty. She goes, there you are now. Have that learned by the time I come back. And I looked at 8 strings. What the hell am I supposed to do with 8 strings? Worked out a way of doing it.
You get your head around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Murrow Kane is saying something interesting here. He's saying it's very much to be said about the correlation between the sound or the beat of the bodhrán and Irish dancing, as Mossie has just attested to. I totally agree with that. And just replying to that, Brian says, absolutely, Murrow, it will be very interesting to find out how many of us bodhrán players have dancers in our families, in our circles growing up, or that where our dancers ourselves. A dance has had a massive influence on me as a musician, and that's interesting because in my own playing, I had no dancing in my family at all. Actually, I was only one of less than a handful of musicians that came from my own family, and so it's just really interesting to hear that, and you can really hear. I know the lads are saying there. I know Seamus a big influence in Seamus' playing is what's going on with the dancing, and it makes so much sense. Like what we are playing is dance music. I suppose,
Yeah.
So it's very important to I suppose to play to go with that, and pay homage to that too, would you have any thoughts on that? Just in terms of what comes out of, like, would you, let's say if you're playing with dancers or you're playing for dancers, would you ever be kind of influenced by what's happening there and then in front of you by what a dancer's doing, and would you find yourself nearly replicating what they're doing, or would you try play around that?
It depends. If I'm playing with the likes of my niece, or I'll tell you, a fantastic dancer from Canada, Emily Flack.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, she's a brilliant dancer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's a percussionist with her feet. All right. She's coming to us regularly on a Wednesday night when we're playing in Maroney's, and there's a couple of videos of it knocking around there on YouTube as well. But my God, the syncopation in her dancing was just absolutely fantastic. And I just sit down and literally beat the living daylights out of my drum to try and match what she's doing.
And her timing is on.
And her timing is bang, 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 bang. Everything spot on right down the line.
she's a force to be reckoned with, and especially if she sits in on the session, you know, if she's dancing away the session, like it just adds so much
Yeah.
to it, like really does. Seen a couple of videos of her actually dancing down in Ennis down your neck of the woods, and fantastic.
Also a really nice singer and piano player.
Yeah. So I hear.
You know, and with that kind of like, she kind of got that Kate Breton thing kind of going on with the piano, which is again another big influence of my style of playing. I grew up listening to the likes of Jerry Hollander, and I used to love his stuff. Oh my god, and I was going like, oh my god, that rhythm just is so, what the hell did they just do there? Tape recorder, rewind back.
Try replicate.
Wow. 10 days later, this tape's starting to wear out a bit.
And it's amazing as well if you go away from something, if you play something and you listen to it and you go, you know, your kind of mind's blown and you go back to it, you know, it could be a couple of weeks later, you forget about the tape, could be a couple of years later and you listen back and go, oh my god, that was amazing, you know, and you might understand it more, you know, with, yeah, that's really interesting. Moss, I suppose we'll leave it there, but it was just really, really fantastic to talk to you, and thanks a million for jumping in and doing it.
It was an interesting experience.
And
listen, good luck with the hive.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I know you have you in there.
And
well.
like I said, say goodbye to your social life when you run a Bodhrán group.
I haven't had a social life for a long time. I'm kind of getting used to it now, so it's all good. I'll just have to deal with it, and I'm delighted to have everybody there.
Listen. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Anna as well. That was a great interview. I loved it.
Absolutely, Anna was really, really great. It was good fun. So we'll do it again, Mossie. That is for certain, man. We'll do it again. Fair play to you.
I'll hold you to that. Take care of yourself, all right?
All right, Mossie. I'll see you soon, man. Thanks a million, and thanks again. Good luck.
All the best.
So that was brilliant. A really enjoyable second experience of What's the Buzz. This is a thing that I'm kind of learning as I really go as well. So thanks for all your support with it all. It's really enjoyable, but also quite stressful. Just trying to do all this on your own. When we're doing this kind of stuff for Bill of Buzz, Colin is usually the man that does all the techie stuff, and he's deadly at it, and I'm just trying to learn it now, so I'm trying to catch up with him. But so again, yeah, thanks again for all your support. And what Mossie was just mentioned there about the Hive is just a new little Bodhrán group that I set up as well. Another place for us all to have the crack or kill each other, whatever you think, and just have some fun, have loads of arguments. But no, it's really about just more community vibe. That's really what we're after. And Mossie has done such a great job in creating that over the last few years with the Irish Bodhrán. So thanks again, Moss, for that, man. And looking forward to trying to push my own group a little bit and just get some stuff going on that. So with that, guys, I think I'm going to leave it go. If anybody wants to join the Bodhrán Buzz Hive is the name of the Facebook group, the Bodhrán Buzz Hive. If you want to jump in on that, should be down in the little ticker there below. You should be going by you there. If you just type that in, you can join the group, and there's going to be some stuff going on every week. Every Saturday I've decided to do like a kind of a Zoom, play a few tunes and have a bit of crack. It's basically, I've called it the Buzz Along. So we're going to buzz along, have some fun. We could have a couple of hundred people in the call. We could have 20. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll build as we go. So absolutely more than welcome if you want to join that. It's going to be predominantly mainly for Bodhrán players, but I'm absolutely happy to have anybody else in. And if anybody has any comments or anybody wants to have a chat or ask some questions, it's no problem. It is, just so everybody knows, it's not a class. I'm not doing a class. It's just we're going to play a few tunes and just have a chat. Just get to know each other, and that's what it's all about. Okay? If anybody is looking for shticks, these sticks are on the website, on the Bodhrán Buzz website there. You can get them. I'm really, really happy with them. I know there's a couple of people in the comments there that have gotten a set of them. Some people there have gotten a set of 2 instead of just 1. I'll show you the second one. And they're very, very happy with them. So yeah, if anybody's looking to get them, they're there on the website. I have a batch of them in now at the moment, and I've probably about 15 of each of them left. So if anybody wants to jump in, go for it. So without further ado, I suppose we are going to leave it at that. And yeah, it was just lovely to have you. And thanks again for jumping in and dealing and just with my awful technical ability here with this stuff. But I'm learning as I go, and I'm enjoying it. It's actually something I really look forward to, although I do be really scared. But it's all good. Okay, right, guys, I'm going to leave you all go, and I'll be seeing you soon. Take care, and I'll hopefully see you over in the group.